Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Ruth. We're now ready to begin Ruth chapter 3. Remember, we've seen so far that Ruth has been gleaning in the fields of Boaz. We've discovered that Boaz is a kinsman redeemer. That is, he is related to the family of Naomi's husband and thus has the right to redeem the family. Remember, we looked at the law of redemption yesterday, and we discovered that when an Israelite family lost their land, either through economic deprivation or need, had to sell it perhaps, a relative could redeem it for them so that it would be returned to them. Land was never meant to be sold permanently. Your inheritance was to be that of your family forever. So if your land was lost, you had to sell it because of economic need. A redeemer, who is a relative, could pay the cost of redeeming your land and returning it to you. Boaz was a kinsman redeemer. Now, there's also a role to play in redeeming the widow. You remember I've told you this is a patriarchal society. So when your husband dies, you basically have lost your security in life. Now, if you've got sons, your sons will take care of you. But what if your husband dies and you have no sons? Then you have neither a husband to care for you nor a son to care for you. You could become economically deprived. That is the case of Ruth. Her husband has died, and of course they had no sons. So there was a provision of the law where this matter of redemption applied to the widow. We're going to read from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 25, verses 5 and following, the institution of what is called Levirate marriage. Let me read to you what the law says. Now, if brothers are living together and one of them dies without a son, then his widow must not marry outside the family. Her husband's brother shall take her and marry her and fulfill the duty of a brother-in-law to her. The first son she bears shall carry on the name of the dead brother, so that his name will not be blotted out from Israel. So you see, for the case of the widow, the brother of the deceased husband will take the widow as his wife and provide for her, thus providing security. And if a son is born, he will inherit that of the deceased brother. Thus, the family tradition will be maintained, the inheritance will be intact, and the widow will be cared for. Now that becomes important in the story of Ruth. Boaz is the redeemer. He can redeem the land for them, but also he can claim Ruth as his wife to provide for her. And so Naomi tells Ruth, you need to make an audacious request. You need to go to Boaz and ask him to become your redeemer, to marry you, and thus provide a family for you, and also the inheritance will stay within the family with your children. Chapter 3, the first few verses. So Ruth's mother-in-law Naomi said, my daughter, she says this to Ruth, my daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for. Now Boaz is a relative. He's the kinsman redeemer. Now tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. So wash, put on perfume, get dressed in your best clothing. Go to the threshing floor. Don't let him know you're there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do. I will do whatever you say, Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law had told her to do. Now it's a moment of celebration. They're celebrating the completion of the barley harvest. And Boaz will be on the threshing floor all night. So Naomi says, Ruth, go and make the request. When you see where he lies down, you go and lie at his feet. I know this strikes us as strange and unusual, but basically what Ruth is doing is asking Boaz, be my redeemer. Take me as your wife, provide for me, redeem me, and redeem the inheritance of my children. She's making a bold request. She's asking Boaz to become her redeemer. This is symbolic of audacious prayer. When we ask of the Lord great things, And the greatest thing we ask is that he will redeem us. And of course, the Lord will, because that's exactly why he came to be. He came to be our Redeemer, to rescue us from our economic and our spiritual deprivation. And we see a symbol of this here in Ruth, making this bold request of Boaz, please be my Redeemer, care for me. She's asking him to take her as his wife and to redeem her and to provide for her and her children after her that will come. It is an audacious request, and it shows the power of redemption, and she's prepared to do it. Naomi has given her wonderful advice. Be bold and ask Boaz to be your Redeemer. So she does. It's going to work out in a wonderful way, but we'll continue the story of how Boaz reacts to this audacious request in our next session. So join us next time for our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Ruth.